to join us on the show right now, Chris Farrell, the Director of Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight, sir.
Great to be on, thanks.
Absolutely. You guys posted something earlier today on your Facebook page and at Judicial Watch as well, talking about the United States now admits that Mexican drug cartels, these DTOs, drug trafficking organizations, control parts of the U.S.-Mexico border?
Absolutely, that's true. That is correct. And one of the most disturbing things really is the chain of spotter locations, in particular through Arizona, where DTO spotters are resident on hilltops in Arizona looking south and providing really Pathfinder guide-type operations using night vision devices, radios, cell phones. And they're armed, and they're looking south, guiding backpackers bringing marijuana up into the United States.
You know, we've talked with the sheriff there in Pinal County, Arizona, Paul Babu, and he's told us about this, and he's not actually on a border county. He's, a few hundred miles north of the border.
Yeah, he's at least 70 miles north, yes.
And they're seeing these things, where the high ground in the county occupied in a lot of cases by these spotters, as you say, and they're getting resupplied. I mean, it's frightening to think that quite literally the drug cartels occupy the high ground in much of our border areas.
They literally do, and in one instance, I was out with the U.S. Rangers from the Bureau of Land Management. Interestingly enough, BLM actually has more active border area to control than the Border Patrol does in Arizona, at least, which a lot of people don't realize that the responsibilities break out that way, but they do. And so I was out with these two BLM Rangers coming up onto I-8 from the side, kind of really awash, going after vans loaded with marijuana that they knew had just come from a drop point where these backpackers had marched them into the United States. As soon as they hit their lights and came up onto I-8 on a hillside behind us, pop-up flares lit up over the desert as warnings to the other backpackers coming up through the valley. Literally, it's a military operation. They are armed with night vision, with pop-up flares, radios, cell phones. They have solar panels that bring up with them to recharge their electronic gear. And they occupy hillsides throughout Arizona.
And it's, I mean, you describe this, and Chris, it's like you're talking about Afghanistan. It's like you're talking about Iraq, and for these folks who are living along the border, and we've got a lot of listeners who are right there on the border. I mean, their life is so removed in so many ways from folks who may be living in the burbs of the big cities of the Northeast.
You couldn't be any more correct. That's why this is now a little while ago, but not too long ago. Back summer, not this past summer, but summer before, Congressman Steve King from Iowa, who is a good friend of Judicial Watch, and I know a strong supporter of the NRA, we went down to Arizona with him to show him some of the stuff because he is sitting on the Immigration and Border Security Subcommittee of the House Judiciary Committee, and we want to take him down there and show him, hey, look, this is the situation on the ground. This is what ranchers and farmers and just folks trying to get by, running a small business, this is what they're dealing with every single day. Guys walk out, the famous case of Mr. Krentz, the rancher in Cochise County, goes out on his own property armed, and drug smugglers, gun him down and leave him for dead. And of course, he does die. And this is what people face day in, day out. And for the most part, big city Eastern establishment, D.C. Beltway land, you might as well be talking about Mars as far as they're concerned.
Absolutely. But, the really frightening thing, Chris, and something I think is often overlooked, and you guys point this out, the cartels are either operating in or have a relationship with criminal gangs in 1,000 U.S. cities right now. Easily.
I saw one estimate that said that the rough guess was that there were 18,000 operatives, drug cartel operatives in Texas alone. To translate that, that's an old-fashioned heavy armor division. That's the equivalent of 18,000 people. connected in some way, whether it's couriers, spotters, traffickers, mules, the whole soup to nuts of the transition of bringing drugs up into the country and distributing them. That's the level of challenge that we face.
Absolutely. And, this new federal report that's out, as you guys point out, it was released to very little fanfare. There was no press conference with, $16 muffin baskets or anything like that for reporters to nibble on. They just very quietly released this report out because I think it is so sobering, and it is in many ways so far removed from the public comments of people like DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano, who say that the border's never been more secure. In this report, they're talking about unprecedented levels of violence continuing in Mexico for years to come. And, obviously, I think we all need to be concerned about the spillover effect.
Well, and there are spillover effects. We also happen to represent Tiffany Hartley, who you may remember just a year ago tomorrow, her husband was shot dead while they were out on jet skis in Lake Falcon, Texas. And she's been looking for justice in that case now for the last year and has received a stiff arm from Justice, the FBI, and State Department. We ended up filing Freedom of Information Act requests so that she could get some records on what the government is doing with the Mexican government to try to resolve the case and get some closure. And again, even though we had letters from Democrats and Republicans alike at the state level, at the federal level, her own governor, Governor Hickenlooper in Colorado, where she lives now, and despite all that political pressure and our requests, the Obama administration refuses to give this woman any sort of answers whatsoever. So we sued on her behalf to try to force them to produce records and documents about her husband's murder.
As you're talking about this, Chris, I'm reminded of the family of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, who, as well, have not gotten any answers from our government. They've not even gotten an apology for the fact that these Fast and Furious guns were found at the crime scene, the murder scene of Agent Terry, and it seems like, in fact, the U.S. Attorney's Office even tried to deny the Terry family victim status. They said that they weren't really victims of their son and their brother's murder. It seems like the Obama administration really doesn't want to have anything to do. I mean, they want to talk about gun trafficking efforts. They want to talk about
the
big
big
government
lie that they keep repeating endlessly about guns going south.
Right,
it's nauseating.
But the actual victims, it seems like the administration not really interested in talking to them.
It doesn't fit with their narrative. They've got a political narrative that they're trying to advance at all costs, and anything that runs counter to that, they do the ostrich maneuver. Their head goes in the sand, la, 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 I can't hear you, and they just keep repeating the same mantra about everything being more secure and better and smarter, and just the opposite is occurring. We have any number of supporters and contacts and sources along the border who tell us violence is escalating, instability is increasing, drug trafficking is up, and it's getting worse instead of better.
All right. So what is the what's the takeaway from this? With DOJ saying, one thing in these reports and another thing, it seems like publicly, what is the next step, and what can be done in Congress, what can be done at the state level to try to actually, deal with this problem if the Obama administration isn't really interested in doing anything about it?
Well, this incredible contradiction between the happy talk coming out of Janet Napolitano and then the ugly truth from the federal report that was just released, that has got to be highlighted over and over again. So, those persons who are interested in this, the folks listening to this program, need to, there's a couple of things they can do. One thing, they can go to our website, judicialwatch.org, and read the report for themselves. But then they need to demand from their federal officials, whether they be their representative or senator, but even from state officials, from their county attorney, whoever they communicate to, say, look, there is an inherent contradiction. This is a falsehood. It's a lie. We know that the numbers are up. What are you going to do about it? They have got to bring pressure on their elected officials. They communicate in a polite but clear and direct manner that they will not stand for it, and that this is an obvious lie, and they have got to demand justice.
All right. Listen, Chris, thank you again, sir, for joining us on the program. Really appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Chris Farrell joining us from Judicial Watch here on NRAnews.com and Sirius XM Patriot.